Hi, my name is Joshua Tucker. I'm the director of the Jordan Center. I'd like to welcome all of you here today for today's event. And before I turn it over to our distinguished speakers, I just want to let you know that if you're new to the Jordan Center and haven't been here before, we have a sign-up sheet here where you can get on our email list so you can continue to find out about wonderful events like this. And just to draw your attention to, we have another sort of jam-packed month of events here at the Jordan Center. And in particular, coming up this Friday, we're going to have Susan Peters-Smith, who's going to be giving a book talk on her new book, Imagining Russian Regions. And then next Thursday, we've got the newest episode, the newest event in our New York City Russia Public Policy series. So we're going to have an event here at the Jordan Center next Thursday at 5 o'clock on Putin's last term, ? So that'll be the topic of the event, and we've got scholars coming in from around the country for it'll be a panel discussion. So it should be super interesting. Anyway, that's some of the stuff we've got coming up, and we've got more events. We have our schedule here at the table as well if you're interested. Without further ado, it is my great honor to turn over to your host for today, the newest member of the Russian and Slavic Studies Department here at NYU, Майя Винокур, who will take the event.
Thank you so much, Josh. Wait, I haven't said the important part yet. So it's also my honor and my great pleasure to introduce the legendary writer and public figure Tatьяна Толстая, who's to my right. Hello. So Tatьяна Толстая has traveled widely and taught in the United States, but she currently lives in Moscow, where for 12 years she was a host of the prize-winning and often controversial talk show School for Scandal, Zlosloye. She is the author of the novel Slinks, published in Russian 2000 and in English and other languages shortly thereafter, and several collections of short fiction, which have also been translated into a number of languages. And today we're here to talk about her most recent volume of fiction translation called Ethereal Worlds, which I think is it for sale? Yes, it's out from Knopf, and actually we're also fortunate to have the translator for the volume, Migdal, in the audience with us. So at some point we will switch spots when it's time for the Q&A. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Tatьяна Толстая. So I have many questions for you.
Sure.
But we can start with the questions, or we can start with your reading. It's really up to you. What would you prefer?
I don't know, but I guess maybe people would prefer me first to read, so that
Sure.
additional questions will
Absolutely.
appear, perhaps.
Absolutely.
The story is called 2020, and it's written for this book. I mean, it doesn't exist in Russian. It was written for a special purpose for appearing in this book. Somehow it summarizes and explains why the choice of the stories for this book, because they are united by some idea, the idea of Ethereal Worlds, because the title copies in a way the Russian title, which is Легкие миры, but in Russian Легкие миры still means something slightly different. The language is untranslatable as a whole, so if you look attentively at a word, it doesn't have the exact translation in any other language, I guess, except it's a dog or a table or something of that solid kind. But as soon as it's more abstract, it becomes less translatable, because, for example, легкие in Russian means at the same time easy and light in terms of weight, and ethereal means also something else, and it gives another dimension. It adds another dimension to the original Russian title. So when we were choosing the way of translating this легкие word, we agreed on ethereal and written being spelled in just this very way, A-E, and so on. It is spelled different. This makes it more weird, this particular spelling. Anyway, the very idea of these words, I hope weird enough. So, 22. My grandfather, Alexei Tolstoy, a famous Russian writer, attended the St. Petersburg Technological Institute in his youth, starting in 1901, thinking he would like to become an engineer, but he never became one. He described to my father how difficult it was for him studying there. Here is his professor by the blackboard addressing the students. Let's picture a cigar-like object, and that's it. My young grandpa is in a trance. He's picturing something cigar-like. He sees a cigar. You need to clip the end of it before you can smoke it. Golden cutters carefully trim away the dry brown leaves. What wonderful aroma wafts from quality Havana tobacco. Out of nowhere appears a balloon-shaped brandy snifter full of heavy red-brown cognac, casting golden reflections. Oh, to grasp the glass in your palm, warming it, the undulating golden flickers, the bluish smoke. You inhale it, you tap the cigar to break off the ash. It's dusk, the heavy drapes drawn back. Outside through the window, there is the crepuscular early evening on snowy St. Petersburg streets. A sleigh pulled by a courser silently whooshes by. Who is rushing and where? To the theater, to a romantic rendezvous. Suddenly reality interrupts this waking dream. Chairs thunder, the professor erases the blackboard, wiping away formulas interesting and useful to any engineer. See you next time, gentlemen. Grandfather never finished his studies at the institute. He committed himself wholly to literature, becoming famous for, among other things, his historical novels. Writers who knew him personally described his imagination in the later years as a clairvoyant. He was able to improvise, creating on the fly the most complicated dialogues, keeping them psychologically astute and peppering them with convincing historical specifics. He saw the past in great detail, every button on a jacket, every wrinkle in a dress. This ability to daydream was passed on to me, although not to the same extent. I didn't start out a writer and had no plans of becoming one. Although I happily swam in imaginary expanses, I had no words to describe them. Then, one fine day, when I was 32 years old, I decided to correct my myopia by undergoing surgery in the famous eye clinic of Professor Fyodorov. This was in 1983, before they used lasers for the procedure as they do now, but instead made corneal incisions by hand with a regular razor blade. Yeah. The incisions took 3 long months to heal. At this time, while the eyes recuperated, you could see things only poorly, approximately, through tears that constantly streamed like rain on the window pane. And after it was over, one day you'd literally wake up with perfect vision, 20/20. But before that happened, you had to sit in complete darkness. Such were the idiosyncrasies of the process that any light caused insufferable eye pain. At first, for 3 or 4 days, the agony was so great that no analgesics, no sleeping pills brought any relief. Then it subsided a bit. Nonetheless, even at dusk my eyes were ablaze, and the temporary respite of night was interrupted by accidental glances at the stars, their light burning like fiery needles. Finally, it was all I could do, to sit at home, wearing dark sunglasses, the black drapes closed, living by touch. Not a single word, neither handwritten nor typed, did my eyes take in during that prison sentence. Only music, invisible in its essence, saved me from this existential desert. All that was left of the world was music and pain. Gradually, something unfamiliar began to happen to my mind. The blindness was still near total. I didn't yet dare take off my sunglasses to peer outside, but in my mind's eye, I began to see bright visions from my past. They were not simply visions as before, similar to dreams, No, they were words, phrases, pages of text, plot lines. It was as if someone awoke in my head a second me, one who had been slumbering until now. Visual experiences now came with a narrative. In fact, they were inseparable from it. If the wording wasn't exact, then the imagery it conjured seemed obscured by dust or fog, and only the right words cleared it away. I was seeing my childhood, our neighbor who lived on the other side of the fence and whom I had long forgotten. I was 6 when he was 60. Never before could he have been interesting to me. And why him specifically? No matter. Suddenly I saw him, I understood his life, I felt his anxiety and his joy. Suddenly his house, his garden, his beautiful but not so young Tsarina of a wife appeared before me, and with these images words emerged, words that could describe them. A plot line materialized and filled up with meaning. Unexpectedly, the subtext and hidden significance of this yet-to-be-written story appeared. The eternal metaphor of banishment from paradise. My external eyes were still awaiting the sunrise, while my internal ones were looking around, seeking out details. Here is one, here is another, here is a whole bunch. As soon as I was able to emerge from my room into the dim light of the table lamp, I typed up my first ever short story in great haste. I knew just how to do it, what to write, what not to write. And I understood that what remains unwritten possesses a special kind of power, a certain gravity by absence, similar to a magnetic force that can both attract and repel, a force we can see, but that is nonetheless there. This heretofore invisible hidden world was now within my reach. I could enter it at any point, but it had particular doors, with keys of sound, with lockpicks of intonation. The doors could be opened with love, or with tears. One day, all of a sudden, my sliced-up eyes could see again. My vision returned completely and immediately. 2020, as promised. And this was bliss. Meanwhile, I found that the second world, having first appeared to me in darkness, was here to stay. It turned out to be a multifaceted underside of so-called reality, a dungeon full of treasure, an ethereal world through the looking glass, a mysterious box with passcodes to all enigmas, an address book with an exact coordinates of those who never existed. I don't know its geography, its mountains, or its seas. It is so vast, it must be limitless. Or perhaps it's not simply one world. Perhaps there are many. They are unpredictable. They can show themselves to you or not. Some days they may not let you inside. Sorry, the doors are locked. We're on holiday. But to the patient and the devoted, they will, at the end, always yield. The doors will open, and you won't know what you will come across until you enter. Does it answer any question that we're going to ask?
Well, actually, it was I was interested to learn that you wrote it especially for this volume.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because actually, I was looking for all the stories in the original, and I realized I couldn't find this one anywhere on the internet, which was curious. So then I was wondering, how did you decide which stories would go into this volume?
We picked up stories together with my dear translator, Migdal, trying to figure out which stories would be easy for Americans to understand and to read, because there are many, and I would like some stories to be translated, but I was not sure that they will be accepted in a way. I mean, a lot of things would be lost in translation. For example, there is one story in Russian, Zaporizhzh, about the piece of railroad that connects St. Petersburg and Moscow, the two most important cities in Russia. The thing is that the whole story is based on the sound and the meaning, imaginable meaning of the villages that the road goes through. And it's a huge problem for any translator, how to translate toponyms.
How to translate what?
Toponyms.
Toponyms?
Yeah, because
The names. Oh.
did they mispronounce it? Toponyms?
No,
Toponyms?
toponyms.
Okay. Okay, so they mean something, or they used to mean something once. And they sound weird for our ears. And when you go by car or by train, you see these names of these villages, only names. You don't see the village itself, it's somewhere there. But you see these names, and one after another, they create a certain picture, you know? They create a picture of some weird kingdom with some, you know, distorted rules over there, and you wonder how people do live with these names. So all this somehow has to be translated into English, but how? I mean, if you substitute these Russian names by English names, it will not be a Russian landscape anymore. It will be some kind of English landscape. Well, this problem all the translators know very well, and we didn't want to start with this one. It's difficult. As for others, it's just quite an international content in a way. And also we picked up stories that were not, well, they sound international. They were not, they didn't need any special explanation. I mean, just in terms of what I'm talking about. For Russians, more things are close and understandable than to any foreigner. So we just omitted them, and also we picked up stories that has something to do with the idea of this other world in all senses. You know, the one that we guess exists somewhere, or feel exists somewhere, or it's a different state of not of mind but of mood, whatever. You know, like happiness that comes and goes, comes from nowhere, and then just disappears. So we had to find something in common with all these stories, and the best thing was to write a story that would somehow explain, because that's true. Each and every word here is true, as in the whole book. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that leads me to another question, which is obviously this is autobiographical. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I have to assume
Yeah.
that it's autobiographical,
Yeah.
and there are a couple of others that are also like
Everything is autobiographical.
everything is autobiographical. I
The
mean,
window.
yeah. So I was just
Only the window.
yeah, the window, right? So there's this
I forgot.
there's a story at the end with like a magical window that grants wishes, and I mean, it would be, I would love if that were also autobiographical, but like, where does the line lie for you between autobiography and not autobiography, and like fiction and nonfiction?
Well, this window is an exception, but it's a case of pure imagination. All the rest is different degrees of imagination. Some time ago, like 8 or 10 years ago, I changed the way I write, and I turned to the first person writing. I mean, it suddenly occurred to me that when we write in third person, it's the stories that never happened with no one. It's just the imaginary people, imaginary situations, and so on. And it's possible, of course, to make them very, very, very interesting. But we know more or less about ourselves, and it perhaps makes sense to investigate one's own depth to find it. After all, if I dare to write about other people, I could be also capable of writing about myself, because this way you join the writers, the readers, ear, imagination, minds, through also some common ground. And it is more honest to write about oneself, in a way. So I changed the way I see the world around me, and I started describing what I actually see every day or used to see. And for me, it became something like an exercise. I don't, the stories perhaps are not here, but I write in my Facebook. You get out, you go somewhere, I don't know, to buy food, and you return back. And very, very often something happens. You hear a conversation or some event takes place, insignificant. But if you describe it properly, it becomes a story, because this very, how to say, the subject, the narrative, blah, 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 all the features of a story, what makes a story, is there in this, in this tissue of life, in the fabric of life. It is there. You just have to pull it out of it, because it is somehow, you cannot see it before and unless you start making a story out of it. So it is not a problem of, not a matter of imagining things, but a matter of throwing away the extra detail, you know. And then when you concentrate on it, using a certain, you know, writing paradigm, then it really becomes a story. So stories are everywhere. It was an interesting thing for me to realize that you don't need to fantasize. Here they are. Somehow the pattern of human behavior falls along the lines of a story. That's what happens.
Do you feel like, you just mentioned that you do posts on Facebook, and I know that at least, before LiveJournal became what it currently is, you had like an active community there. So is there a special way that you relate to social media? I mean, like, obviously with Cambridge Analytica and everything else, we're like thinking about that, second guessing some aspects of social media in the United States right now. But I mean, do you find that, like, do you use social media as inspiration? Is it like another kind of series of events for you that you can write about? How do you relate to it in general?
That's difficult to say. I mean, if Cambridge Analytics are interested in what I have to say, I doubt that they will get much. I doubt it. And they won't be able to use it anyway. Yeah. They won't sell more or less, or build something, or invite me to a political party. So it's wasted time on me. I create my own world. I write about what I want, how I want, and so on and so on and so on. I am the tyrant in my world. I am the emperor. The others, if they want, they read me. If they don't want, they hate me. I don't care. I have 178,000 subscribers. Though because of the way Facebook is arranged, I'm afraid that only 15,000 read me. All the rest is just photos on the wall. They never read my text. So this is it. We all have about 15,000, because it's the maximum of people who comment or like. So this is it. You never go up. This figure never goes up. Person may be subscribed to you, but still, it's 15,000 maximum. Anyway, it's enough for me to create a pool of people who like what I read, are interested in what I have to say, and these people go and buy my books when I publish a book, and then I have talks and selling these books in the bookshops, and there's always people who come and they know what I write about, and they ask some significant, important questions, and very, very rarely, but I do receive some message that everyone would like to receive. Thanks, you saved my life after I read your story. You always think, oh my God.
Is it important to you to get the feedback, like, or the immediate responses that you can get on social media?
Well, on a whole, yes, of course. But the thing is that, again, people, deep people whom I'm interested in, they rarely write. They rarely until their response. You can only feel them. And those who twitter on the surface, yes, they come to say, oh, what a wonderful, okay.
Well, okay. I mean, maybe you and I should switch spots so that people can ask about just the, I don't know. I had a lot of questions about just like the technique of translating. Like you mentioned that.
Sure.
Please come up here. Because you mentioned that like only certain things work for transmission to like an English-speaking audience or to an American audience, and it sounds like some of those decisions were made kind of in common or together, right? It just would be interesting to hear about your experience of working together and what that was like. And
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, so this technique sort of developed out of necessity because I'm not really a translator, and so I have very little confidence about my being able to do this, and so I said I'll do it if we work together. And so first Tatьяна sent me Smoke and Shadows about 3 years ago, and I labored, and for months I was in torment, and then finally I gave her something to read and she liked it, and then we were able to solve some of the problems that I had trouble solving myself together. And by that point we had already collaborated on a few translations together of plays, and so we had kind of a shorthand, plus I've known Tatьяна my entire life at this point, and so I felt like I knew her voice. And then I was fairly confident I could recreate it. Hopefully I was able to do that. And so the technique that has kind of developed out of our personal relationship and also out of my necessity to make sure every single word isn't just an accurate translation of what she wrote, but also carries with it the undercurrents that Tatьяна built in, because she doesn't write, it's not like one layer, it's all these different layers that kind of, they're like roots of a tree, and they intertwine, and they're so complicated and complex, and in one sentence, there's the surface meaning, but there's also cultural commentary and a little, something from literature and something from politics and something from, Russian culture, and then all of it kind of just merges together. And so I felt like it wasn't enough to find the right word that conveyed the meaning, but also the word that kind of tried to bring all that together. And also, there's certain jokes or punchlines that we had to find parallels in English rather than just translating, because it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be as funny, And then, of course, profanity. That's the other thing that is really hard, because Russian profanity is richer than it really is. It's like, there's a breadth of permutation that keeps growing and growing and growing, and in English it's just, you're restricted to something. And so we had to figure out how to do that, and then there's this one sentence that we could never translate. It's like, it's impossible to translate. It's really the sentence of the century. Which, are there Russian speakers in the audience? Mostly? Посикало хуяка освежила. Translate that. Okay, so it's just yeah.
How it's called, the Maляshka.
Oh, wait, yeah, was she a painter? Was she a painter? I thought she was your,
No, she, not a painter in terms of art,
no,
but
I
someone
understand.
who painted walls.
Painter.
Painter,
No, but I thought she was the, не прораб была. Anyway, I thought she was in charge. Anyway, but yeah, she discovers this room freshener.
Being in charge of not being in
Yeah,
charge.
she discovered this room freshener. She was just very taken with it, and Tatьяна describes it, and this woman had birthed this amazing phrase of she sprayed and bam, everything's fresh. But it's not funny, so we had to we really struggled with translating that. But anyway, so the technique that we kind of have developed over the past 3 years is that I'll do a draft. I'll do as much of it as I can. I'll mark all the things that I'm not happy with and all the questions that I have, and there's certain words maybe or certain sentences I'm not quite sure what their origin is or what they're pointing to, and so I'll come with all these questions to Tatьяна. She'll answer the questions, and then I will give her options of, this is the thing that I think might work here as a, as a parallel in English, and
and then I'll explain the nuance of each phrase to her. And then and Tatьяна obviously is fluent and understands everything, so it's like just this amazing gift that I had. So that's how we would work on it, and then of course all that went to the editor, and we worked with the editor. So that ended up being the process, which I know is a very privileged process for a translator to have.
Yeah, because I was going to say, is it important for you to know your translator personally? Like, would you trust someone you didn't know?
Well, yes, but it is important, but with some people I know personally, if they would like to become my translators, it wouldn't be able, because they are, as they say, on a different wave. You need to be on the same wave. And you need to, my English is not perfect by no means. For example, in order to translate a certain word, Anya would suggest certain synonyms, like 5 synonyms, and I like 1. And she said, no, it doesn't work the way you want. But I want also some words, and I want the phrase, the sentence arranged in such a way that it has a certain rhythm. And Anya, also being a musician, understands very well what is rhythm. I said, I want the sentence to be boom.
And I think in the same way, so that was actually very helpful.
So this is what we are doing. We're not only translating word to word or whatever, meaning to meaning, or idea to idea, but also it has to be musical, and also there is. I see some words as colored, some I don't, and some I see as colored, and it's important to keep this color. If not here, but maybe shift it a little, because the English words have different colors, of course. So all these things, they have to work together, and we understand each other. If we didn't, then it would take years, and we did it pretty quickly.
Yeah, the shorthand really helps.
Yeah.
So, I guess as like a follow-up question, do you think? So again, like with this issue of being understood, right? Like being understood also by an international audience. Like, do you think? Is translation hopeless? Like at the end of the day, right? You can convey the meaning, right? You can convey the plot. And I wonder about this too, because I also translate, right? But there's some sense that certain things are lost. So how do the two of you work through that, or like how do you relate to that question?
You just accept it from the very beginning that a certain percentage is lost, and you can do nothing about it. First of all, if you translate it into English, I don't know about other languages, but English doesn't have diminutives.
Yeah.
And in Russian, so many things are built on that. But it doesn't mean that English is more primitive. On the other way around, English has more words, vocabulary is larger, and there are certain grammatical, devices inside the language. You just have to find which of them work, which buttons to push, so that you explain the same thing without using these diminutives. The meaning is shifted. It is rendered through other devices. It's like some people, older people, they are afraid of internet. A book is a book, but internet, no. Oh my God! No, it's the same thing, but
Information.
Yes,
different delivery system.
Absolutely, and it's not only the meaning. What you think is the meaning is not just this pure cold information. There is what I want to say. Say it in simple words. It won't work. It works through color, through smell, certain aromas and flavors and things like that. Some words have to be harsh, in terms of шершавый, how to say шершавый? Rough, by touch.
Yeah.
So you have to take all this into account, and rather not use your mind, but use your senses. If you get the same feeling, then the translation works. So it's a very, organic thing.
It's so true, because when you sent me Father, that story, I read it and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Because it's so delicate and gentle, and it's like you're afraid to touch it, to break it, you know. And I don't know that I was able to recreate that, but I kind of worked on it in that state of like emotional vulnerability, and that really helped because it was a very emotionally vulnerable experience writing it, I'm sure, but also translating it.
Absolutely.
And so like I had to almost inhabit Tatьяna's emotional state in order to be able to somehow recreate what she was trying
To find
to do.
words, you know, when you
They come to you when you're in that,
yeah. If you put yourself in this kind of trance, this state of vulnerability, let us say in this case, then certain words would come to you first.
Yeah.
You know, there is always a choice. The vocabularies are huge, but you only need I don't know, 2 dozens of words to choose from, and they will come first.
It's true. They
So, yeah.
they light up, right?
They
Yeah.
light up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it goes through feelings, I would say. But there are other writers who do not use feelings; they just avoid them. And so, well, I don't know, Borges, for example. So when you read Borges, I read him in Russian and in English. I don't know Spanish, but the translations, I guess, are both good, and they are quite comparable. It is a cold mathematical thing, and it's written, pronounced in a dry and cold voice. Then you see what he's trying to tell you. He's not emotional at any moment, from what I read. I didn't read all of his works, and I like it this way. But I understand that you need to push other buttons if you translate this kind of writer.
Yeah. So, was there? I'm sorry.
No, when you said this kind of writing, you mean his kind of writing or yours kind
Yes,
of writing?
well, we are, he and I are writing we are on the opposite side of the scale. I mean, I am using this technique, and he using quite an opposite technique.
So when you said, though, to expand it, did you mean that he needs to be more emotional, or
He
just that
doesn't
there's
need,
different ways
no,
to
he's perfect the way he is.
Right.
But I mean, in order to translate him,
Yes.
you don't need to put yourself in some ecstatic trance or
Like-
whatever.
like
No,
you
you don't need it.
Right.
You don't
Okay.
need it. You have to.
It's
It's like a polished metal,
Yes.
and you keep it that way.
Okay.
So all writers are different. I mean, in order to translate the writer, this or that writer properly, you have to figure out what kind of writing it is.
Yes.
You know?
Thank you.
I mean, so maybe actually this is a good opportunity to just like open the floor to questions, right? So I'm not the only like interrogator. So yeah, please.
I do have, you seem so in tune. So was your choice to have you translate based on knowing her? Because you said you're not a translator normally.
Normally, but we did work on Three Sisters, translating Three Sisters together, another Russian play.
Yeah.
So we
Vampirov
had,
play.
yeah, Vampirov play.
So
So
how did that come about? If you're
she's
not
my
a
mother-in-law.
translator?
This is nepotism.
Oh, okay.
You
No secret.
No more. Now I know.
I've known her for a really long time. Yeah. But how that came about was just, I don't know what possessed you to send me that story. I have no idea. I was pregnant. I had nothing to do.
There you go.
Yeah. And my previous translator was unavailable. Jamie Gambrell, wonderful woman. Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah.
Я хотел бы спросить у вас, как живого русского писателя-классика, как вы вообще представляете своего читателя? Когда вы пишете, вы какой-то диалог ведете с потенциальным читателем? Или это какая-то аморфная масса, или это какие-то личности, которые рисуются у вас в голове?
Okay, do you want me to answer in Russian or in
Да,
English?
здесь понимают все по-русски.
Да? Все?
Does everyone speak Russian? Is that true?
No, I don't.
No, that's what I
Okay.
figured, yeah.
Okay. I'll
Just translate the question.
Yes. Well, I'll answer in English.
Do you want me to translate the question? The question.
Yeah.
Oh, so the question is, as a, you know, does she picture her audience, or how does she picture her audience when she's writing, essentially?
You know, I may be wrong, I may be right, but I imagine my audience as myself in a mirror, roughly speaking. I don't condescend to my readers. I don't think that they are so smart that I wouldn't be able to reach them. They're just me, and perhaps I'm right. What I mean, you sit doing nothing, looking at the wall, no ideas come through your head. There's nothing. You are neither smart nor stupid, just there's nothing in your head. And then you take a book of some good writer, and there's life there, there's ideas, and blah, 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 blah. And while you are reading, when you are reading, you are on the same level with him. You feel the same, you laugh and you weep and you cry because someone dies and so on and so on. So this writer managed to make something out of you. You know, he pulled you up to his level. So it is possible to reach, if you want, you can reach practically each and every level. If a writer is, whatever he suggests, you respond to it. The only thing you don't respond if it's not interesting, if it's boring for you, if it's about something else, because perhaps when you are sad and need love and support, you wouldn't read some, I don't know, mathematical textbook or whatever. I think that the writer shouldn't imagine his readers as people who wouldn't be able to understand him. They would.
То есть фактически вы ведете диалог с самой собой.
Yes. Sure.
Еще один вопрос, если вы не возражаете. Не хочу вторгаться в вашу творческую лабораторию, как рождается рассказ? Плод формируется как вспышка, или вы ходите и думаете, я поверну сюжет так, и это мгновенно рождается в вашей голове?
That's difficult to say.
The question is, how does a story germinate and come to her?
It's difficult to say. In my case, sometimes it comes as a response to something. I don't know. For example, a simple example, because it's very different in each case. But for example, something happens, and in my Facebook, I want to give a response to this message or whatever, to this event. And I start writing, and it turns out into a story, a small story. Not just because I'm not responding to anyone in particular. After, I don't know, the second or fifth line, I feel it's a story. And so it continues being written as a story. With the beginning, the middle, and the end, and whatever I like about it. So it existed somewhere. Did it exist? Did it pre-exist in my mind or wherever? Sometimes it feels, how do I know that what to write? I can do it sometimes in 15 minutes. Sometimes it is long and I think, oh, there is a possibility. I'll put it aside and maybe I'll make something out of it longer than just one page or something like that. What is going on? Who knows? Some signal comes from the world and you respond to it. This is a mysterious matter, right? Yes.
I really love your stories, and the way you work with the everyday and the fantastical have always made me wonder about who your favorite writers are, whether Gogol or Saltykov-Щедрин are somebody you enjoyed reading. And the other part of my question is about the idea of women's prose. I read some of your stories in the context of academic context, and one of them was connected with the idea of women's prose during perestroika, things like that. I was wondering if, if you see yourself in any conversation at all with other women writers, like
Never.
Vedущая or anybody, and if not, who do you see yourself in conversation with?
Well, I love Gogol, that's true. As for Saltykov-Щедрин, I respect him, but he's a kind of writer that doesn't inspire love at all. In his real life, he worked as a censor, which nothing wrong with being a censor, but Still. I like writers who create worlds, and he was very sarcastic, and he commented on the world. He didn't create worlds, roughly speaking. I love Bunin, I love Nabokov, I love Chekhov, and Chekhov is really the deepest writer you can imagine, very mysterious in a way, but somehow trying to hide his mysteriousness. I still plan to write about him because there are certain things that I observed in his writings, and I asked the specialists in Chekhov, and they said that from this angle no one looked at his prose. Okay. Anyway, as for women writing, I think it's a totally artificial construct, women writing, and it doesn't exist as such. If it does, then you have to divide it in 1,000 little gender-like, genderian, I don't know what writings. You should have, there's two genders don't exist, you know? There are 4, 5, 16, 20, and so on. Is there a transvestite, transgender, old transgender prose? No, there is no such thing. There's a human being, and this human being, a soul. If you wish, well, in Russia it's easy to talk about a soul. Here it means something different, but it's not mind. It's rather a soul, something that feels more than thinks. Whatever this person can take all kinds of forms in this life, change these forms during the lifetime. And is there a difference between the writings of young people and old people? Of course there is some. But do you divide literature in young writers and older writers? It will be called, ageism. Right? So I don't think that it is an important instrument of dealing with literature, talking about women literature. It's artificial or commercial or something like that, instrumental. It's far from what is actually going on. Are your dreams, what's the gender of your dreams? Everyone who has dreams knows that something unbelievable may happen, or may not. Well, we'll come, just look, we'll come to discussing the gender of dreams. And there will be the departments in some universities. Yeah, gender dreaming, just wait. Now they are discussing the gender approach to mathematics, as you know. Mad people, Stop, mad people. Stop it. So
then who do you see yourself as like-minded?
I don't know.
With?
I don't know. I trust that everyone who reads me becomes like-minded. That's what's going on. I don't read much of modern literature because many times explain that because when I meet readers and they want, if they like my works, they think that I perhaps like someone who is as good for them as my writings are, so they want an advice to me. And I always try to explain that writers are the worst readers of all, because someone else's text, they're written by, they are constructed differently, they're written differently, they're written with a different approach to words, and one shouldn't even read them because they interfere with your own, whatever it is, process. This process is going on day and night, and it's very difficult, at least for most writers, to be able to write, because it's a very, very strange thing. You just pull this, silk thread out of your organism, and it's a slow thing. So you have to take care of this very process, and not by looking what are the others eating. Eat from your own plate. So I don't get involved very much with other writing. Some writers I like the writer, for example, Alexander Terехov. He's not very popular in Russia. He lives and writes now. I think he's a very interesting writer. He is mildly popular. That's it. But for me, it's an extremely interesting mind behind his works. He has 2 huge novels, Kamenny Most and Немцы. I like Немцы most. Very, very interesting. They're just the way he works with the reality. Yes.
Я прошу прощения, что еще вопрос. В вашем творческом процессе практикуете ли вы какую-нибудь цензуру? Я не имею в виду политическую цензуру, а я говорю о каких-то темах, которые вы сами себе запрещаете, каких-то аспектах, которые вы не хотите трогать.
Do you censor your writing, and not politically necessarily, but there's certain themes that are taboo for you or off limits or that type of stuff?
Yes, I do. But it's not that I censor them, it's just there are themes that I don't want to deal with and touch for different reasons. They don't inspire me. There are themes all around, but I take only the themes that do inspire me, but you may say that I censor others. An example. There are writers, let's say, I won't name them, but there are writers who like to write about very unpleasant things. They leave their reader hurt. The reader, after reading a certain book, he becomes hurt. So they bring pain. They don't relieve pain, but they bring pain. And they think that it's a very mighty instrument, you know. Yes, it is. If you take a knife and put it into someone's body, not killing completely, but bringing pain, yeah, it is a mighty thing. But what's the reason? Why? What's the point? Why should they do that? And it's pretty easy to do that, I would say. And if someone has enough talent, then and it's easy, then what's the result? Why do that? I think you should bring pain without showing the way out of this pain. It may be, you know, religion. I'm not religious, though. I believe in the afterlife, but I don't belong to any church, and I think that's all institutes made by people and for people. But I try to stay away from it. I respect it, but it's not fun. But you shouldn't tell people that that's it. Everyone will die. Nothing good will come out of this life. And this is it. You just wasted your time on earth. I don't like it.
Did you say who you were referring to, the writer?
Well, one of the writers, and a very, 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 very good writer, I must say, is Lyudmila Petrushevskaya. She will never say it. She will never give people any relief. No, that's it. Forget it.
Я помню, как мы, вот, наше поколение, увлекались, скажем, Сашей Соколовым, условно говоря, такая версия потока сознания, ну, так сказать, поэтической прозы. И вот с годами, лет, наверное, 20 прошло, вот когда он был, так сказать, где-то здесь, как-то это стало лично мне не так интересно. То есть как бы это исчерпало вот эта вот манера писательская, которую мы тогда только и признавали. И вот вы упомянули Терехова, он гораздо более такой традиционный писатель прозы. Это субъективное чувство вот человека, который стареет, как 20 лет прошло, 30, по-моему. Или вы считаете, что это тенденция современной прозы? Уже вот этот вот модернизм исчерпал себя в прозе. Ну, условно говоря, Джойс, так сказать, Беккет. Трудно, да? Нет?
it's a hard question to translate, but basically,
Там ловит, ну да, английский.
so there was a point in Russian literature and literature where there was a stream of consciousness, kind of modernism, a modernist approach to writing was popular, but is there a tendency to come away from that? Is that your
Yeah.
question? And is that a
More
function of
realistic.
getting older and seeing the world differently? Did I understand your question correctly?
Yes, no, I'm interested in Tatьяna's
I don't know whether,
attitude.
I don't know whether it is this, well, it's called modernism or cave, because many different people call modernism different things. So I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, this stream of consciousness, there were too much of this stream of consciousness, and perhaps people are somehow tired of it. I believe that there is a purpose. Even if you cannot say exactly what is the purpose of every case of writing, every text, but there is always a purpose. It does exist, and modernism had a certain purpose up to a certain point. But to show the world from a different perspective, a different angle, to tell about things that were hidden before and that this simple, straightforward, realistic approach could not show. So the modernism, it opens up the mind of a writer, perhaps, because it's the stream of his consciousness. Sometimes it sounds strange, weird, and so on. And so people do respond to it because they are afraid that deep inside they're also strange and weird and wouldn't be accepted by others. Their fears. And this type of literature relieves people's fears to a certain extent. People think, oh, I'm not the only one mad in this world. All kind of, things happen. But it seems easy to use now these modernist ways of writing, and so they become boring. Everyone, it is how to say. Everyone knows how to do that. Everyone knows how to do that. It's not interesting anymore. It doesn't open any new things. But the some deeper approaches, more classic type of writing, it still works, and it will work forever. Literature will exist forever. It is the other arts may die, but literature will never die because of the word as a basis of literature. People differ from the rest of the animal kingdom by the fact that they use words to communicate, to think, to communicate, whatever, to make a human a human. So as soon as you accept that, then literature has this source that will live forever. It cannot stop. Without water, everything that lives will die. Without words, people wouldn't be able to communicate at all, though there are difficulties, of course, in communication always, but still, they will stop existing. So literature is not going to die. It will change, it will come back to where it started, and if you look back, if you study, let's say, ancient literature, not necessarily the good one, but the bad one, you'll be amazed. For example, there was such a thing, it was called Античный роман, the ancient novel. Antique novel, whatever, classical novel. It is the three centuries before Christ and 3 centuries after this period. It is soap opera, and the subject is just the same. There was a very, rich merchant, and he had a beautiful daughter who was about to marry some beautiful person, prince, whoever, far away there, and so she sat on a ship, and the ship sailed, and then these sea pirates came and captured her, blah blah blah, and then there is the whole quest, and finally, towards the end of the story, this young woman is saved and marries her young man, whatever. Soap opera, Brazilian soap opera, I would say. Nothing changes. That's what is interesting for people. Because life is a quest with the beginning, with the meaning, with the end, with all this questioning about what is it for, and so on. And as for other arts, they may die, okay? They did everything to do that. Some are beyond repairs.
This question is, I think, related to the previous question. I'm wondering how important plot is to you. How important is it to you when you're conceiving of a story to know that certain things are going to happen and there's going to be, a twist, a resolution, a surprise, and a conclusion?
I'm not very good at plots in the traditional sense, and I know that. Maybe because I'm not very interested in them. I'm not interested in what happens next. Page turner is not for me, and I think that it's very good for detective stories, for example, the page turning effect, but not for just books, literature. So I'm trying to feel this plot, not in the events that happen, but in something that goes under, beneath, beyond these events. So it's ups and downs of something else, not just events as such.
Sounds like Chekhov.
No, not exactly. Not exactly. Maybe yes. Thing is that Chekhov has he has one thing in each of his late stories, at least. Maybe not 100%, but most important stories. There is a transformation. There is a certain line, events before this line and after this line, they change completely. And this transformation is always connected with a door. There is a door in each of these Chekhov stories. This door may be a door, it may be a portal, it may be a room, it may be some space. You enter the space, and when you leave it, you are not what you used to be. Something changes. It may be a very small space, it may be a huge space, but it's there. It's amazing how he is just following and repeating it again and again. This is what I was going to write about. It's really very interesting. But it's one feature that is persistent in his stories, and another feature is his characters. They are not they're not responsible for their fate, for what happens to them. It always happens for no reason, as if some forces behind this scene, like some gods or whatever, you don't know, they move them on this chessboard. Always these things happen.
I was just going to say, I went to a talk here and on Stalin, and that was supposedly his favorite writer was Chekhov. Chekhov, interesting. Very different people.
It's true.
Yeah, I wanted to return to the wonderful story that you read to us today, and to this moment of your turn to writing, and this theme of vision, and turning from exterior vision to interior vision, which of course is a long-lasting trope in literature, and one thinks of, Greek plays and Tiresias being the blind one who actually sees what happens. But it seems to me that with you, with your turn is very different, in the sense that this turn to interior vision is not some prophetic or disembodied. It's actually the way you express it words have colors, they have smells. It seems like it's some ways also very embodied, right? So if you can
Comment on that?
comment on that and on the way your vision and senses, you talked about how your senses are very important, have been turned around in that moment.
Well, I had this ability to see the colors of words and sounds before it happened, but it was useless knowledge for me. Before I started writing, I had this color vision. It was of no use. And after it happened, it's not. I understand there is this trope exists, but it's not a trope here. It's really what happened. It's just up and happened. So I knew how to apply this feeling, this understanding of colors and sounds and feeling of inner rhythm to what I was doing. It was the way of moving words around to get to get something out of it. You know, I always I gave my students just the same. They ask how to write. I give them the same example. You have some wires. Okay, here's the wires, pile of wires. You have some metal. You have some plastic. Does it do something? No. If you combine them in a certain way, it becomes a radio. It was music. Yeah? It's just a way of combining. But you have to, figure out how. Because it could be done always. It's all hidden in the world, in the material, in the Mendeleev's table. So if you see things colored, all people see sounds and all letters, for that case, colored differently. Nabokov saw it quite differently from me, for example. Arthur Rimbaud had a colored vision, also it was different. I had it since my childhood. Not all letters have different colors, but most. And I was appalled to learn that someone like Rimbaud, for him the letter A was colored red. No. No. And Nabokov's coloring is also unbelievable. He says that the girl he loved in his youth was called Tamara. Or in real life she was Valentina, but he calls her Tamara. And he says that the colors are this T, but mostly consonants. T, M, and R. They are somehow pink or whatever. They are lightly colored. And what? M is red, raspberry red. T is dark blue, dark blue. R is black for me. So Tamara is a pink word. Come on, it's a dark name. He would be enraged if he meets my opinion. So yes, such a thing exists, but you practically cannot share it. Again, when I was teaching students here in the United States, in Skidmore College, I gave all of them this exercise. They should draw this colored alphabet. I would say that 1/3 or 1/4 of them understood what's about. Others they didn't see. And one girl was absolutely wonderful in coloring. She saw not only colors, but she saw shapes. And I remember that her W's, she couldn't even put it down. She explained it. The W was made of ice or some kind of crystal like that, with these peaks. And it was semi-transparent, so whitish, semi-transparent. Imagine, beautiful double. I'll never forget that.
wonder if it has anything to do with the color blocks you had as a kid.
I know this theory.
Yeah.
I know, but
The
this.
Fisher-Price effect.
I know. I know this theory, but no, because I remember my.
You didn't know it?
No, I remember that having that color block, and I remember even when I was a child thinking it's wrong.
Oh.
This color block. Yeah, they should paint it different. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
I don't quite see this at all, but I'm just wondering how this relates perhaps to Scriabin and his involvement with color and his.
I don't know.
I'm sure you're aware of Scriabin and his.
Yes, but I don't know, as I don't understand
I'm just wondering if there
anything
was-
about music.
No, I just don't understand the color and words, but then I'm thinking Scriabin was also very much into color when it came to his music. I was just wondering if there was any relation.
To Scriabin, me, never. I don't know about that. But as I said, I know that many people see colors, but they see differently from me and from each other. If you ask, there are 33 letters in Russian alphabet, 20 something in English. So if you take 1,000 people and ask them, of course you'll get a group that sees vowels as, let's say, red. Though how can A be red? No.
Is there any scientific explanation for the
Yes.
words?
Yes.
How it's cultural things. It's not.
The exact choice of
Biological.
color, no, the exact choice of color may be cultural, but no, it's biological. I read an article about that. Well, I trusted this article. It seems scientific, but they said that this, how it's called, synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia, okay. The synesthesia does exist, and that it was, there was a study of the brain, and so somehow, well, I cannot explain it medically, but it does exist. There are people for whom barriers between these impressions do not exist or are very weak, because so when if you name letters for me, and I cannot say exactly letters or sounds that correspond to these letters, it's somewhere in between, because when you say A, B, I see them as letters written, right? So it's not that I listen to them, I see them, and I cannot tell you what has color, the O as a sound or the O that is written. I cannot say. And it immediately has color. So for those people who have it strongly, so to say, something in their brain responds as if it were some taste or some real thing, because we have 5 tastes, and so they respond. And here, it reacts as if it were a taste or what. So it does have some biological basis, but I don't know. That's what I read. Yes.
Хочу немножко поменять тему. В журнале «Нью-Йоркер» несколько лет назад был напечатан ваш рассказ «Студень». Интересно было, я слышу, даже если его читать по-английски, то текут слюни, так? Вот как вы работали с переводчиком? Можете рассказать?
Question is about a story that was published in the New Yorker called Aspect. It was published. I know, I translated it, yeah. Aspect. So the question was, how did Tatьяна work with the translator? Yes, so Aspect is a Russian dish, for those that don't know.
It exists in the US too.
Yeah, but I guess it's very Eastern European. You don't know normally. Aspect, yeah. Студень. Холодец. Yeah, so it's like bits of meat suspended in jello. I don't know.
Salted jello, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So no, what's the question about? How do we work?
How do we work?
Just the same way as we worked with each other's story. But it's not about that it's tasty. It's about that it is horrible.
Well, I mean, I think if I can answer that, you painted such a vivid picture and such a horrifyingly vivid picture for me that it was it was actually one of the easiest stories to translate because all the imagery is there. The words kind of just come to you from the image, like you see the picture, and then the right words come. This was the easiest story to translate and also the most horrifying.
It's also interesting because that story is so much about sound, right?
Mhm.
It's not just about taste because there's a lot of like the process of making the aspect involves a lot of like chopping and hacking and all these there's these onomatopoeic sound effects that have to also be rendered in English.
Sure.
So I thought that was and that story in particular, that seemed like a particular challenge.
And weirdly it wasn't. I don't know why. And there are others that are very simple on the page. They're actually really hard to do. I'm not sure why that story was easy.
I don't know, but perhaps the language itself also helps. I mean,
It
the
really-
English language, because all this, say, the word chop sounds
It's true.
That sounds
Kind of,
right.
yeah.
Hack, chop,
Hack,
clippity
chop.
clop, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that's yeah.
the words they already exist. You know?
Yeah.
Like I always wonder that the word juice is so juicy, you
Yeah.
feel it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And who knows why the words of this or that language, they sound like that or like this, whether there is some inner feeling that comes from this distant time back when people, chose to call it this or that. Why? Or maybe it's just my imagination, but still, sometimes I feel that, yes, this is the right sound for this sort of thing.
If it chills you, right?
If it chills
we go like this, that sort of sound. Yeah.
People have more. Yep.
In the beginning, I'm just wondering, when I go shopping, I never come back with stories. And you like extract them from the tissue of life, as you said. Does it become a burden after a while?
No, it's just a relief from a burden, because if you don't write for some time, a long time, then you feel it like a burden. That this world inside it cannot be taken out. You can breathe it out. And if you find a story,
it's a conduit.
So it is really a relief. It's somehow, I don't know, it confirms to you that literature is there. Just
Did you train yourself to see these events, the plots, and into conversations?
Did you train yourself to see?
Did you train to find them or observe them?
No, I don't train myself, but I look around and I listen to what is said, and really, when you are ready, the words and tiny events, mini events, they come your way. It is very strange, but this is it. Everyone who is ready to do something, to write, knows this. Well, it's called serendipity, or used to be called serendipity. You are looking for word or idea, and you wander around the room, which is always filled with books, and you open just some book by chance. Open up in the middle, here it is, thing you need. Yes! You think. And you start writing, it's there for you. I don't know how it works, but yes, serendipity exists and it works. Same there. You are out ready for a story. You're always ready for a story, actually. And quite often these stories just come your way. Someone talks to you in this or that way, and the things around, they somehow start by themselves being organized into support for the story. So you feel gratitude.
I was just wondering, my head is always filled with noise. I don't hear other things, just differently.
Yeah, it's. I'm not musical at all, but I imagined how musical people, they hear music everywhere, melody. I would never be able to find a melody in life, but they do, always.
Unrelated question: which art is beyond redemption?
art is beyond redemption.
Sorry.
Well, actually, I mean, you have this story, The Square, right, which is about Malevich. So, and I couldn't tell reading it. Is Malevich beyond redemption? Like, how do you feel about Malevich?
No. I think that it is that Malevich is amazing, but how to say? In his quest, in his desire to find something, like in a bad fairy tale, he found something dangerous, evil, and wrong. And here it is, and there is no way back. He was looking for it, and here it is. He was the one to find the key to the hell. That's how I see it. It's strange. It's a very strong piece of art, right? Very strong. If it were not strong, it wouldn't have this impression on the people. It wouldn't be so famous. By the way, his white or red squares, they exist, but okay, so they're white and red squares, who cares? He would never become that famous for his white or red square that are like this or like that, or other triangles, but this black square, that is something. But it is the beginning of whatever happens next. Yeah.
Next
This is
100
it.
years, yeah.
Wow.
The end of Victorial.
Well, in a way, yes. It is one of the doors that you open up.
It's an
and
anti-portal somehow.
Yes. He found it. So many people were offended to read that about Malevich, but I'm not. That would be so primitive to say that. It's not worth discussing, or it's just nothing. It is something. A very horrible something.
So on that optimistic note, maybe let's thank our speakers. Thank you, Aina. Thank you, Tatьяна. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone.